Hello, thank you for joining me. Today we're returning to Fallout 76, where we're going to spend another 1000 scrip with the Purveyor on 3-star ranged legendary weapons, and as always, I'll take a few moments to talk about each one, about what makes them good, bad, or indifferent. So let's go on ahead and get started and see what the Purveyor's got for us today. So for our first pull, we get a Mutant Submachine Gun with VATS critical hits doing plus 50% damage and 15% faster reload. So the Mutant's effect is better than it used to be. It gives you up to 25% bonus if you have up to 5 mutations, each mutation worth 5%. If you have more than that, it doesn't increase beyond the 25%, which is much better than it used to be at the 10%, just for being mutated no matter how many you had. It's still a little bit low, but at the same time, most endgame players are likely to have 5 mutations by the time you factor in things like Speed Demon, Marsupial, either Herbivore or Carnivore, and another mutation or two that work well with your build. So you're not really giving up a whole lot for that extra damage. It's just not a whole lot of extra damage, which makes it not one of my favorite effects, but it's definitely not the worst effect around either. The VATS critical hits doing plus 50% damage, that's actually one of my favorite second stars. I'm a heavy VATS user, and this is the type of weapon that you could definitely use almost exclusively in VATS. So you can get quite a bit of extra damage from that second star, especially when you're fighting bosses, because VATS criticals actually bypass their right off the top 70% damage reduction like the Scorchbeast Queen has, and I don't remember what Earl's is. I think it's more than 70% though. So that's definitely a good thing. And then the faster reload, that's great on any ranged weapon, because the less time you spend reloading your weapon, the higher your DPS is going to be. So that's a good thing. Overall, this one is pretty solid. If it had a better first star like Bloodied or Anti-Armor or even Aristocrats or Junkies, then this would actually be a very, very solid roll. Because it's mutants on the first star, it's pretty solid, but not nearly as good as it could be. I could definitely see some players using this until they got their hands on something better, but overall, this one's probably not going to end up on my vendor because I don't think anybody's really going to be that interested in it. So let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. And here we've got an Instigating Gatling Laser with 25% faster fire rate and VATS critical meter filling 15% faster. So the Instigating effect does not do what it says on the box, unfortunately. The double damage is not actually double the damage that you see on your card, assuming that you've used any perks or chems or anything at all to increase that damage. It's double the base damage of the weapon. That's not necessarily a bad thing when you're looking at high damage weapons, but weapons like this that focus on low damage but very high fire rate, it's really not the best on. Because of lag and things like that, you will sometimes see the instigating effect continue to affect the target after the first shot, but that's basically lag, and I wouldn't, rely on that. The 25% faster fire rate, that is great, especially on a weapon like this that's really already very high fire rate. Unfortunately, the first effect doesn't really work too well on this weapon, and the third star, it's a very good effect, the VATS critical meter filling 15% faster, but this is not the type of weapon that you're likely to use in VATS, because even if you've got a very high AP bar, you're going to burn through it very, very quickly with the weapon like this just because of how quickly it fires. So you're not really going to be able to make nearly the use of VATS criticals that something like a handmade or, even a semi-automatic weapon, fixers, things like that would be able to do. So really, this isn't the kind of weapon that I see most people trying to VATS with. So the third star is kind of lost. The second star is very good, but overall, this weapon is pretty much a dud, especially considering it's a Gatling Laser and not an Ultrasight Gatling Laser, which is just straight up an inferior version of the Ultrasight Gatling Laser. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. And here we've got a Ghoul Slayer's Crusader Pistol with plus 25% damage while aiming and plus 250 damage resistance while reloading. So the Ghoul Slayer's effect is probably one of the less useful of the Slayer's effects. Not because there's not times when you're likely to be fighting ghouls. You know, you'll see them in daily ops, you'll see them at the White Spring if you like to run the golf club there. You'll see them in plenty of other places as well. So you'll definitely be fighting ghouls on the regular, but they're pretty squishy in general, so you don't really even need a legendary effect to put them down pretty quickly in most circumstances if you've got a solid build. So getting plus 50% damage to ghouls specifically, definitely not the first star that I would want. And I don't know that it's worth keeping a weapon around specifically to fight ghouls either. The plus 25% damage while aiming, that's a solid effect. This is not necessarily the weapon I would ideally see it on. I would prefer to see it on a heavy weapon because heavy weapons are far more likely to be, at least by me, aimed as opposed to using VATS. But if you're the type of player who enjoys aiming down sights even with, pistols and rifles as opposed to just heavy weapons like I tend to do, then that's a good effect on any weapon for you because it's just an extra 25% damage for doing what you already enjoy doing. The 250 damage resistance while reloading, that is a solid effect because when you're reloading, you're not really able to fire back, obviously, so it makes you a little bit vulnerable. So getting some extra protection while you're vulnerable is not a bad thing, but it's definitely not one of my favorite third stars, in large part just because the diminishing returns on damage resistance once you reach that 300 to 400 threshold. So it is going to help you out no matter what your damage resistance is, but it's just not really doing a whole lot in my opinion. So overall, the only really good effect on this one is the second star. So again, pretty much a dud. Let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. And here we've got a Suppressor's Hellstorm missile launcher with plus 50% VATS hit chance and plus 1 perception. So the Suppressor's effect is, it does what it says on the box, unlike Instigating, but I'm just not sure there's that many situations where you really need to reduce your target's damage output. It's generally better to just put them down quickly and reduce their damage output to 0% instead of by 25%. So, and that really applies with the missile launcher as well, because if you're using a missile launcher, whether it be the Hellstorm or the Standard, you're really wanting to put ideally groups of enemies, but at least one enemy, your target, down with every shot. So, the Suppressor's effect on a missile launcher, pretty much lost in my opinion. The plus 50% VATS hit chance, that could be very good on this, just because it'll make it very easy for you to hit your target, and if you hit your target, then you've got a better chance of taking them out in one shot. The drawback with using VATS with a launcher weapon like the Hellstorm missile launcher, for example, or, other missile launchers, the Fat Man and so on, is that if you miss your target in VATS, you are very likely to have the projectile just go off into nothingness and not get any splash explosive damage on anything. So that's a bit of a drawback, but if your VATS hit chance is high enough, that shouldn't happen a lot, and the plus 50% VATS hit chance will help keep your VATS hit chance higher. So that's a good thing. Plus 1 perception, well, that synergizes well with the second star because the primary benefit of perception is that it gives you some more VATS hit chance. So if you're going to be using this thing in VATS, that's great. Unfortunately, the first star pretty much makes this one unexciting, so let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. And here we've got an Executioner's Crusader Pistol with faster fire rate and faster reload. So this one's interesting. The Executioner's effect is actually, in the right situation, a very good effect. Unlike most of the, actually, as far as I know, all of the other legendary effects that provide a bonus to damage, the bonus to damage provided by the Executioner's effect is actually multiplicative, meaning that even if you've got perks and chems and whatever else boosting your damage, you're going to get plus 50% of the damage that you see on the damage card when the target is below 40% health with the Executioner's effect. That's a very powerful effect, with the primary drawback being that it does absolutely nothing while your target is above 40% health. So the best type of weapon for a weapon or for an effect like that is a low damage weapon that you're going to have to put many shots on most targets to put them down. The Crusader Pistol is one of those weapons, so it's actually a good effect on this weapon just because pistols are a bit underpowered, so you're generally going to have to put several shots on your target to put them down unless they're particularly squishy. So the Executioner's effect will frequently reduce the number of shots you have to put on your target by at least 1 or 2. The faster fire rate, if you could modify the Crusader Pistol to be fully automatic, this would be borderline god roll. Maybe not quite, but very, very good. Because the Crusader Pistol is semi-automatic only, you're not getting nearly as much out of the faster fire rate as you otherwise would. The Crusader Pistol pretty much already fires as quickly as you can pull the trigger, so it might allow you to pull the trigger a little faster and get a little bit more DPS out of it, but I don't think it's going to do a whole lot for you on this weapon, even though that is one of the best effects in the game, particularly for fully automatic weapons. The 15% faster reload, again, if this weapon was able to be modded out to be fully automatic, that would synergize very, very well with the faster fire rate because you would be emptying your clip much quicker, and so spending less time reloading would be great. Because it's not nearly as good as it could be, but 15% faster reload is never a bad effect on a weapon, and it's pretty much always one of the best 3rd stars. So overall, this one's interesting. I might play around with this one a little bit. You can't trade the Crusader Pistol, so it won't end up on my vendor, but we'll see. I might play around with it just to see how it does. But let's go on ahead and move on to the next one here. And here we've got a Junkie's Gauss rifle with 25% faster fire rate and 25% less VATS AP cost. So the Junkie's effect is one of the best effects for full health builds. It's actually good for low health builds too, but you're probably better off with Bloodied if you are going low health. The Junkie's effect, however, it gives you plus 10% damage per addiction that you're suffering from, up to a maximum of 5 addictions. And if you choose your addictions wisely, either based on the chems that you're likely to use a lot in combat, or just for penalties that don't really affect your particular build much, then it has a lot of upside with very little downside. And that 50% damage is tied for the best damage bonus that you can get at full health. The 25% faster fire rate, much like the Crusader Pistol, it's a bit lost on the Gauss rifle. You can spam the trigger on the Gauss rifle and just fire it as quickly as you can pull the trigger, just like you can with the Crusader Pistol, and the 25% faster fire rate is not really going to help that. Unfortunately, it also does not help the weapons charge up any faster. I have tested that, and it seems to charge up at exactly the same speed with or without that effect. If it did allow the weapon to charge up faster, that would be an amazing effect for this weapon. Because it doesn't, it's kind of like not having a 2nd star on this particular weapon, again, even though it is one of the best 2nd stars in the game. The 25% less VATS AP cost, that's a very good effect, and this is the type of weapon that you could definitely use in VATS and take advantage of. This is also the kind of weapon that you're typically going to put most enemies down in one shot by targeting a weak point. So, especially if you're using stealth and getting the stealth damage bonus, you can put a suppressor on the Gauss rifle, so it's very stealth capable. So, with that in mind, the less VATS AP cost is probably not doing as much for you as it could on some other weapons, just because if you manage your VATS targeting correctly and have solid AP regeneration from a combination of being well tuned, well hydrated, and having AP regen on your armor, then chances are you're not going to run out of AP with a weapon like this anyway, because you're only going to be putting one shot on most targets. But less VATS AP cost is still one of the best 3rd stars in my opinion, not except for heavy guns. It's not particularly good on most of those, but on a weapon like this, it's still very good. Overall, this one's a solid weapon. If it had a better 2nd star, it would be even better. But anyway, let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. Okay, this one's interesting. This is an anti-armor railway rifle with plus 50% VATS hit chance and 90% reduced weight. So the railway rifle is one of the hardest hitting weapons in the game that you can actually make fully automatic as far as rifles go. And it cannot be suppressed, so you're not going to be able to use it with stealth, but it makes for an excellent run and gun weapon if that's what you feel like doing. And there are definitely times when I feel like doing it. The anti-armor effect on this weapon is very good because this weapon does not have a magazine mod, so it does not have the ability to mod in armor penetration. So getting the anti-armor effect on it is even better than on a lot of other weapons, although the anti-armor effect is always one of the best effects. It's good for fighting bosses and particularly well-armored enemies such as super mutants and such. It loses a lot against squishy enemies, but I don't see that as much of a drawback because if they're already squishy, then they're probably already going to go down pretty quickly, and you don't need a whole lot of assistance to take them down quickly. So overall, I do consider anti-armor to be one of the best first stars, and its damage output often rivals Bloodied when you are running with a Bloodied build and comparing the two. The plus 50% VATS hit chance, again, that's one of my favorite second stars. It increases the damage output of the weapon by allowing you to target the weak points more efficiently, such as the head in most cases, but for example with Mr. Gutsies you can target the thruster and so forth. It also increases the effective range of the weapon. You'll still see the damage drop off when you're firing past the range on the weapon card, but you'll offset a lot of the accuracy penalty for VATS past that range because of the plus 50% VATS hit chance. So getting at least half damage when the target's out of range is better than nothing in my opinion. So that's a good thing. It increases the range, it increases damage, it's just good all around. The 90% reduced weight, that's... on this weapon, I don't know that it's the best, but this weapon doesn't have as many mods as many of the other rifles, so you will see probably more benefit from it than on this weapon than you would on, say, a handmade or a fixer, because it's important to keep in mind that every mod that you put on the weapon does not benefit from the 90% reduced weight. But even so, it's still reducing your carry weight and allowing you to carry more stuff, which is a good thing. I know myself and probably most of you, at least at times, struggle with carry weight on your characters, so anything that allows you to carry more is a good thing. So overall, this one is pretty solid, not amazing, but it might go up on my vendor. I suspect somebody might be interested in it. Let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. And here we've got a two-shot pipe revolver with plus 50% limb damage and your VATS critical meter filling 15% faster. So I really don't like the two-shot effect in most cases. The big drawback in my opinion is that the two-shot effect inflicts a significant accuracy penalty to the weapon, and I don't like that. There is something to be said for the two-shot effect with the explosive effect or with an explosive weapon such as with the launchers, the Gauss weapons, or just anything with the second star of exploding bullets. In those cases, two-shot is actually very good, but in most other cases, I'm really not impressed by it. The pipe revolver is interesting. It's notable in that it's the only revolver in the game, and really one of the few gunslinger guns in the game that can be suppressed. So that definitely gives it a leg up in a lot of situations. So it's definitely, if you are interested in a gunslinger build with revolvers, it's definitely worth considering using the pipe revolver just because you can put a suppressor on it and get some stealth benefits which will significantly increase your damage. The plus 50% limb damage, I really don't care for that effect that much. It does have some use, but overall, I prefer to put enemies down quickly and not worry about crippling limbs. It's a little bit more useful when you are fighting a boss fight and trying to get the Scorch Beast Queen to land, so you're targeting her wings and trying to cripple those. But in that case, you're probably better off using a perk that does the crippling for you. So again, in that case, the plus 50% limb damage, not doing a whole lot for you if you're doing it that way. The VATS critical meter filling 15% faster, that's very good for this weapon because if you're using any sort of gunslinger weapon, you're probably going to want to use it in VATS just so you can help offset some of its lower damage output by getting some extra damage from VATS and VATS criticals. So by VATS I mean targeting weak points in VATS, such as the head and you know, the thrusters on Mr. Handy's and so forth. But it's not the only way to go, but getting the extra getting the extra 15% faster critical meter fill is going to get you more criticals and therefore some more damage. So that's a good thing, but overall this weapon is pretty unexciting and going to end up turned back into the Purveyor, I believe. So let's go on ahead and check on the next one. And here we've got a Mutant's Minigun with bashing damage increased by 50% and 15% faster reload. So we talked about the Mutant's effect earlier. It's not the best, it's not the worst. You're not really giving up a whole lot to use it in most cases, but it's not doing as much for you as some of the other legendary effects could be. But what's interesting is this is a minigun with bashing damage. And if you've seen any of my videos before, you know that I do not like the bashing damage effect on pretty much any weapon except for miniguns. Now, it would be much better if this was a Bloodied or Anti-Armor or Junkies or Aristocrats minigun, but even the Mutant's minigun with bashing damage is not bad because you can put a Shredder mod on this thing and get some very serious damage output thanks to the bashing damage increased by 50%. So, if you're interested in going minigun melee, this weapon wouldn't be that bad for you, and I might actually put this weapon up on my vendor just because, for relatively cheap, because the first star is not that good. Just in case there's somebody out there wanting to do exactly that. I'm not really that into that, but it is a very effective method of putting enemies down quickly, so I won't knock it. The 15% faster reload, well, if you do decide to use this thing as a melee weapon with the Shredder mod, that's probably not going to do a whole lot for you. But, again, it's never a bad effect, especially if you are actually going to be using it as a gun. So if you're actually going to be shooting it, then getting some faster reloads, never a bad thing. But overall, this thing is really more of a shredder, or ready to be made into a shredder. So anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the last one here. And here we've got a Mutant's Short Assault Rifle with plus 50% VATS hit chance and plus 50 damage resistance while aiming. So we talked several times about the Mutant's effect. I'm not going to go into it again here. I think you get the point. But the Assault Rifle is actually kind of an interesting weapon. Its damage output is a little bit lower than the Handmade or the Fixer, which are the premier commando and probably rifleman weapons, unless you're going sniper, in which case you might be using the hunting rifle or the Gauss rifle. But it's very interesting in the fact that it has a very, very smooth recoil, like virtually no recoil at all on the assault rifle, and it reloads very, very quickly, even with nothing modifying its reload speed. So it definitely has some benefits to it. I feel like this weapon could actually be a true competitor for the Handmade and the Fixer if its base magazine size was, say, 25 to 50% higher than theirs, allowing it to keep up with the DPS on them even if it took more bullets to do so. But it doesn't, so it is going to be a little bit lower in the DPS, but it's still an interesting weapon, something that you would have no problem farming day to day with, although probably not the weapon you'd want on boss fights. The plus 50% VATS hit chance, same as we talked about before, it's great. This is definitely the kind of weapon that you can use pretty much in VATS exclusively. It will increase your damage output by targeting weak points, as well as increase the effective range. So, not going to go into that much further here. The plus 50 damage resistance while aiming, unfortunately, that does not synergize well with the second effect, because you're either using VATS, or you're aiming, or you're hip firing. You can't be doing those three things at the same time. So, if you're going to be using this thing in VATS the way I would, then the third star is not going to be doing a whole lot for you. If you're the type who aims down the barrel a lot, or aims down the sights a lot, then the second star is not going to be doing a whole lot for you. So, In my opinion, I think you're better off with a weapon that matches your playstyle better, but there is something to be said for a weapon that's a little bit more versatile. And the plus 50 damage resistance while aiming, that's probably a little bit better than the 250 damage resistance while reloading, just because you're probably going to spend, with most weapons, a lot more time aiming if you're the type of player who likes to aim down sights. So you're going to see more benefit from that, although you'll still run into the issue of diminishing returns if your damage resistance is already in the 300 to 400 range. So overall, not the most exciting pull. I'll probably go on ahead and give this one back to the Purveyor as well. But yeah, that was it for this week. Nothing super exciting, a couple of interesting ones, but we'll be back next week. And please remember, if you enjoy content like this, please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps the channel out, and it doesn't cost you any money. And until next time, I will talk to you then.